The stock market has been wild lately.
Yeah.
AMD is one of those companies that everyone's talking about.
Oh, for sure.
And there are a lot of opinions out there. People really can't decide what to make of it.
Mm-hmm.
So today on Investing Talk Podcast, we're going to try to figure out what's going on with AMD.
Okay.
Is it a good investment? Is it a trap? What's the deal? We're going to look at earnings. We've got expert opinions
Mm-hmm.
and even some of the buzz on X,
Oh, wow.
formerly Twitter, of course.
I'm really excited about this one.
Me too. Me too.
You've got this company, huge potential,
Right.
especially with AI exploding like it is.
Yeah.
But then you've got this market
Yeah.
still so volatile,
It's all over the place.
trying to find its footing.
Everyone's trying to figure out, can AMD actually pull it off?
Right, right.
But before we get too deep into the specifics of AMD,
Okay.
what's the big picture?
Yeah.
What's the overall market looking like in early 2025?
Well, volatility is still the big story. Interest rates, nobody's sure what's happening with those.
Uh-huh.
We've still got those tariff threats.
Right.
Inflation's cooled down a little, but
Yeah.
consumer confidence, it's still a bit shaky.
Yeah. It's understandable.
So you put it all together.
Yeah.
Investors are nervous.
Makes sense.
And that, it affects how they see any individual stock like AMD.
So we've got a mix of economic jitters,
Uh-huh.
but then there's that long-term optimism, especially around technology and AI,
For sure.
which brings us to AMD's stock.
Right.
It's been on a wild ride.
To say it's underperformed, that's putting it mildly
Yeah, that's true.
over the past 3 years.
Uh-huh.
But here's the interesting thing.
Okay.
Even with that recent history, right now, AMD is trading at a forward PE ratio.
Yeah.
21 for 2025 earnings
Okay.
and only 14 for 2026.
Interesting.
That's pretty attractive, especially for a company in a high-growth sector.
Yeah, you don't see that very often. So how do you explain that? I mean, you've got this potential for growth, but the stock's not really reflecting that.
Well, their Q4 2024 earnings report might tell us something.
Oh,
I mean, they had some big wins,
yeah.
but they also missed in some key areas, left everyone wondering what to make of it.
Okay. So let's get into those earnings then.
Yeah.
Data center revenue was pretty incredible, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
69% year-over-year increase,
Wow.
almost $3 billion.
It's huge.
Driven by demand for their EPYC processors. Those are for the big server farms.
Uh-huh.
And their Instinct AI chips, like the MI300X and the new MI325X.
So a major win for AMD, especially with how much everyone wants AI chips right now.
Right.
But if that was the good news,
Yeah.
what was the bad news?
The problem is, even with that growth, it still wasn't as much as Wall Street expected.
So even though they did well, they didn't do well enough.
Right. Analysts wanted to see even bigger numbers.
It's like they couldn't keep up with the demand.
Yeah, and on top of that,
Good?
their gaming revenue was basically flat,
Hmm.
even dipped a little.
Not good.
And investors, they were hoping for more there too.
Makes sense.
Profit margins, around 6%.
Okay.
Not terrible,
Uh-huh.
but pretty modest compared to some of their competitors.
So not the amazing performance that everyone was hoping for.
Yep.
And the market, I'm guessing they weren't thrilled.
As you might expect, AMD's stock took a hit,
Yeah.
dropped about 11% right after the earnings release,
Okay.
down to around $100 a share by mid-February.
Ouch. That's a big drop.
Yeah, and keep in mind, it was
Yeah.
already down year to date and
All right.
way off its peak back in March of 2024.
So anyone holding AMD stock is not having a good time.
Not really, no.
So what did the experts think? Were they ready to give up on AMD or did they still see some potential?
Well, it was mixed.
Okay.
Just like the earnings report itself, some analysts, they downgraded AMD after the news, like Daiwa.
Hey.
They lowered their price target, changed their rating from buy to outperform.
So little less optimistic, but not giving up completely.
Right. Boca Securities and UBS, they did the same thing.
Reduce their price targets.
Yeah.
Okay. So a bit of a more cautious outlook, but they weren't ready to write AMD off entirely.
Not entirely, no.
So especially when it comes to AI.
Right. There's still a lot of belief in AMD's long-term prospects in the AI space.
So this idea that AMD could be a major player in AI, it's still on the table.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Christopher Rowland, analyst at Susquehanna.
Okay.
He had an interesting take.
Okay, what'd he say?
He said, yeah, the data center numbers, they missed.
Yeah.
But if AMD can scale up their Instinct GPU shipments,
Okay.
there's still a lot of upside potential.
So basically, they've got the potential. They just need to execute.
Right.
It's this back and forth between disappointment in the short term and belief in the long term. Some people are scared off by the earnings miss,
Yeah.
while others are seeing it as a buying opportunity.
You got it.
And then, remember how AMD's stock dropped to around $99 in mid-February?
Yeah.
A week later, something really interesting happened.
Oh.
Phil Guido, an AMD executive, he bought $500,000 worth of AMD stock.
Wow.
It was the first insider buy in 12 years.
That's a big deal.
It is, right?
Especially when the stock's been doing so poorly.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, I believe in this company so much I'm putting my own money in.
A strong statement for sure.
It definitely got people's attention.
Oh, yeah.
Along with that insider buy, we started seeing reports of big institutions accumulating AMD stock.
So the big players were moving in.
Yeah, while some individual investors were getting nervous, these big firms, with all their resources, they saw an opportunity.
Yeah, and to make things even more interesting,
What's that?
there were reports of congressional investments in AMD too.
Wow, so even Congress is getting in on the action.
It seems that way.
All this buying, plus a technical indicator called the RS, suggesting the stock was oversold, it really made people think a turnaround could be coming.
It created a lot of buzz, that's for sure.
So even though they stumbled with those earnings, there were signs that things could be turning around.
Yeah, fueled by some pretty influential buyers.
And speaking of influential players,
Okay.
we can't talk about AMD without talking about Nvidia.
Oh, of course, the big rival.
They are the dominant force in the AI chip market.
Absolutely.
And you can't really understand AMD without understanding Nvidia.
Right, and here's where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
Nvidia, they actually beat earnings expectations in Q4 2024.
But their stock still went down.
It did, dropped 8.5% after earnings.
So even a successful company like Nvidia isn't immune to the market jitters.
Nope.
Wow.
It was mainly because of profit-taking, people selling off to cash in on previous gains. And, those ongoing fears about tariffs hurting the whole tech sector.
So it wasn't really about Nvidia's performance. It was more about the broader market.
Exactly. And that Nvidia dip, it actually pulled down the whole semiconductor sector.
Including AMD.
Oh, yeah. The VanEck Semiconductor ETF, that tracks a bunch of chip companies, it dropped by 8.6% that week.
So even though AMD's own earnings caused their initial stock drop, the overall market trends kept it down.
Yep. Sometimes it's not just about how the company's doing. It's about how the whole market's feeling.
Yeah, it's like a rising tide lifts all boats, but a falling tide can drag everyone down.
Exactly.
But even with those external pressures, AMD still has some things going for it, right?
Yeah.
Some advantages that could help them stand out.
For sure.
Especially in this AI race.
One big advantage is memory capacity. Their chips have more of it.
More memory, okay.
For example, the MI300X.
Yeah.
It has 192 gigabytes of memory.
Wow, that's a lot.
Nvidia's top-tier H100 GPUs, they offer between 80 and 141 gigabytes per card.
So why is that extra memory so important for AI?
Well, AI applications, they're complex.
Right.
Especially things like large language models and deep learning algorithms. They need to process huge amounts of data all at once.
Okay.
And having more memory lets the chip handle bigger chunks of data at the same time.
So it's like having a bigger workspace.
Yeah, exactly.
You can handle more complex projects without getting bogged down.
Exactly.
And this memory advantage, plus the fact that Intel's still struggling with their foundry transition, that puts AMD in a pretty good position.
It does.
They're the strong #2 player in the AI race.
Yeah, maybe not leading the pack yet, but definitely a contender.
And you mentioned earlier that there's another factor that could help AMD supply constraints.
Right.
The demand for AI chips is so high, there aren't enough to go around.
Exactly.
And if AMD can ramp up production quickly, they could really benefit.
Absolutely.
It's like the gold rush. Whoever gets their shovels in the ground first wins.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
So as we're looking at all this data, are we seeing any patterns emerge?
We are.
Okay, I love patterns. Tell me more.
The first pattern is the signal that AMD might be undervalued.
Undervalued, okay.
Remember those forward PE ratios we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, if you look at what people are saying on X and what the experts are saying, there's a growing feeling that AMD is undervalued compared to other companies in the sector.
So it's not just the numbers, it's the overall buzz.
Exactly. And it's not just the PE ratio either.
Uh-huh.
AMD's price-to-sales ratio has been going down,
Okay.
even though their revenue is stabilizing.
Interesting.
That could make it a really good value play for investors.
So you're basically getting more for your money with AMD compared to some other company.
One way to look at it.
Okay, what's the second pattern?
So the second pattern is all about institutional buying.
Okay, we touched on this earlier.
You did.
But it's worth repeating how important it is.
Right.
These big investment firms, they're putting their money into AMD.
Along with insiders and even congressional investors.
It's one thing for analysts to talk about potential,
Yeah.
but when you see these big players putting their money where their mouth is, that's a whole different level of confidence.
It adds a lot of weight to the idea that AMD could be on the verge of something big.
And the third pattern.
Well, it's tied to everything we've been talking about.
Okay.
It's AI-driven growth.
Makes sense. AI is huge right now.
It is. It's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
And AMD is in a great position to benefit.
They've got the chips, they've got the momentum.
Yeah.
And the demand is only going to increase.
Exactly.
Seems like things are lining up for AMD.
It does.
At least in the long term.
Right.
But there was also that Bloomberg report, right?
Oh, yeah.
That a potential asset sale.
Back in February, Bloomberg reported that AMD might sell some of their data center manufacturing plants.
For how much?
$3 to $4 billion, including debt.
That's a big move.
It is.
What's the thinking behind that?
Well, AMD hasn't officially confirmed it.
Right.
But the general idea is that it could be a strategic move.
Okay.
Streamline their operations.
Yeah.
Focus more on AI chip development.
So they're going all in on AI.
That's the idea.
And getting rid of anything that doesn't fit with that strategy.
Exactly.
It's a bold move.
It is.
And investors are definitely paying attention.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of AI, AMD has been releasing some new products, right?
They have.
To keep that momentum going.
Right.
Tell me about them.
Well, in mid-February, they launched the Instinct MI325X GPU.
Okay.
It's already available on Vultr. That's a cloud computing platform.
So they're not just sitting around, they're actively innovating.
Exactly.
Trying to stay ahead of the game.
And they've got the MI350X coming out later this year.
So they've got a pipeline of new products.
Yeah, and they're not just making chips, they're showing how those chips are being used.
Okay. For example, Meta, the company behind Facebook, they're using AMD's MI300X for their large language model.
Oh, wow, that's a big deal.
It is. Having a company like Meta choose AMD's chips,
Yeah.
it's a big endorsement.
Definitely adds to AMD's credibility.
For sure.
And strengthens their position in the AI landscape.
Absolutely.
But let's not forget about that volatile market we talked about earlier.
Right.
Those anxieties are still out there.
Oh, yeah. February was a rough month.
Yeah.
Tariff threats, that huge crypto hack.
Yeah.
Concerns about consumer spending slowing down.
All of that creates uncertainty.
For sure.
And that makes investors nervous.
Absolutely.
And if you look at what people are saying on X, you see that reflected in the conversations.
Yeah.
There's a lot of frustration.
Especially with the constant AMD, NVIDIA comparisons.
It's like people are tired of AMD being seen as the underdog.
Right.
The NVIDIA, but cheaper option.
Exactly.
They're saying, look at the numbers, look at the growth.
AMD is a solid company.
Yeah.
And the market's not giving them enough credit.
They're saying AMD's undervalued.
Right.
But of course, the worries about a possible economic slowdown
Yeah.
and the fierce competition in the AI market,
Uh-huh.
those haven't gone away either.
So it's a bit of a standoff.
Yes.
Between positive sentiment and lingering doubts.
Exactly.
And that's why AMD stock is kind of stuck, trading between $105 and $110.
It's in limbo, waiting for something to tip the scales.
And as of March 2nd, 2025, AMD is trading right around $107 to $108.
Okay.
Up from its low in February, but still down year to date.
Right.
And a long way from its peak in 2024.
It's been a roller coaster ride.
It has.
And it raises the big question.
The big question everyone wants to know.
Is AMD a buy, a hold, or a wait and see?
The $107 question.
Exactly.
We're going to dive into that in part 2 of this episode.
Okay.
We'll look at the pros and cons, analyze the risks and rewards,
Yeah.
and try to figure out what the future might hold for AMD.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned. We'll be back after a quick break. Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast.
So we've been talking about AMD,
Yeah.
their ups and downs in the market, all the things that are affecting their stock price.
Right.
And now the big question.
A big question.
Is it time to buy AMD?
Yeah.
Should you hold on or just wait and see what happens?
The $107 question.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's break it down.
Okay.
What are the arguments for buying AMD right now?
Well, the people who are optimistic about AMD, the bulls, they point to a few key things.
Okay.
First, that forward PE ratio of 21.
Yeah.
It's pretty attractive.
Right.
It suggests that AMD is undervalued compared to the rest of the semiconductor industry.
Especially compared to Nvidia.
Right, their main rival.
So basically, you're getting a deal
Yeah.
on a company that has a lot of potential for growth
Exactly.
in a market that's booming.
And that growth potential, it's directly tied to AMD's position in data centers and AI hardware. They have the products, they have the partnerships, and they're riding this huge AI wave.
And all that institutional buying we talked about, those big investment firms putting their money into AMD.
Yeah, that's usually a good sign.
They see something that maybe the rest of the market is missing.
Right, they're betting on AMD's long-term success.
So the bulls are saying, look past the short-term ups and downs.
Right.
Focus on the fundamentals.
Yeah.
AMD has a bright future.
That's the argument.
But what about the other side?
Okay.
Why would someone hold on to AMD or even sell?
Well, the bears, the more cautious folks, they have some valid points too.
Okay, like what?
They're worried about AMD's profit margins.
Yeah, those are pretty thin.
Right, only around 6%.
Not great.
Pretty low compared to some of their competitors.
Yeah. So even though they're making money, they're not keeping as much of it as some other companies.
And that raises questions about their profitability.
Okay.
Can they scale up their operations without hurting those margins?
The bears are basically saying, show me the money, AMD.
Yeah.
Prove that you can actually make a profit.
And then there's Nvidia.
Ah, yes, the big
leader in the AI chip market. And they're not going down without a fight.
It's David versus Goliath.
It is.
And some investors, they're not so sure about betting against Goliath.
It's understandable. It's a tough battle.
Even if AMD does everything right, there's no guarantee they can beat Nvidia.
That's the uncertainty that makes some investors nervous.
Right. They'd rather wait and see what happens, see how AMD performs compared to Nvidia. So we've got the bulls excited about growth potential and the undervalued argument. And then we've got the bears worried about profits in the competition.
It's all about weighing the potential rewards against the risks.
And then there's the option to just hold on to AMD.
Right.
Maybe the most sensible choice for people who already own the stock.
Yeah, if you're not sure what to do.
You ride it out. See how things play out.
You avoid selling at a loss.
Yeah.
But you might miss out on bigger gains if the stock takes off.
So it really depends on the individual investor.
It does.
What are their goals?
Right. What's their risk tolerance?
But there's some things to think about before making a decision.
Definitely.
First, your investment timeline. Are you in it for the long haul?
Yeah, if you are.
You might be okay with the short-term fluctuations.
Right.
Focus on the long-term potential.
But if you want quick gains, AMD might not be the right choice.
You got to align your investment decisions with your goals.
Exactly.
Second, how much risk are you comfortable with? AMD is a volatile stock.
It is.
No guarantee it's going to go up.
But if you're a risk taker, the potential rewards might be worth it.
But if you prefer something more stable, maybe look at some other options.
And finally, how much confidence do you have in AMD's leadership? Do you believe they can overcome the challenges? Beat the competition?
Deliver on their promises.
You're not just investing in a company.
Right.
You're investing in the people running it.
It's not just about the numbers.
Right.
It's about the leadership.
A vision.
The overall story of the company.
And with AMD, that story is still being written.
So how can we get a sense of how that story might unfold?
Well, we can listen to what people are saying, tap into the conversations that are happening.
Get a feel for the sentiment.
Exactly.
And one of the best places to do that is on X.
Oh, yeah, formerly Twitter, of course.
X is like a giant focus group for the stock market.
It is.
You can see all the different perspectives, the hopes, the fears.
All playing out in real time.
So let's dive into the X first.
Okay.
See what people are saying about AMD.
Right.
What are the main themes we're seeing?
One of the biggest themes is frustration.
Frustration.
Yeah, people are frustrated that the market doesn't seem to get AMD's potential.
They see the numbers, they see the growth, But the stock price isn't reflecting that.
Right. They think AMD is a sleeping giant.
Okay.
A company that's about to become a major force.
They're like, wake up, market. AMD is coming.
Exactly.
So a lot of passionate AMD supporters out there.
Oh, yeah. And they're not afraid to show it.
They're defending the company, criticizing the doubters.
But you also have the skeptics, the bears.
Lurking in the shadows.
Waiting to pounce.
Their main argument is, show me the profits.
Right. They acknowledge the progress, the growth, the innovation.
But they want to see those profits.
Exactly. They're saying, prove you can make money, then I'll believe.
It's a fair point.
It is.
But X isn't just about the bulls and the bears.
Oh, no.
There's a whole range of opinions and insights.
You got it.
Some people are analyzing charts.
Technical analysis.
Looking for patterns.
Trying to predict where the stock is going.
Others are focused on product launches.
Right.
Partnerships.
Industry trends.
Seeing how those will affect AMD.
And then there are the people who are just enjoying the ride.
Yeah, the drama, the speculation.
It's a wild world out there.
It is.
So on X, you get this mix of information, analysis, emotion.
All in one place.
It reminds us that investing isn't just about numbers.
Right.
It's about people.
Perception, the motion.
The wisdom or sometimes the foolishness of the crowd.
Exactly.
So by looking at these conversations, we can get a better understanding of AMD as an investment.
A more complete picture.
So what does all this X chatter tell us?
I think it comes down to cautious optimism.
Cautious optimism, okay.
People are excited about AMD's potential.
Yeah.
They think they're on the right track.
But they're still a little skeptical.
Right. They recognize that there are challenges ahead. They're like, we're rooting for you, AMD, but show us what you got.
And that cautious optimism, you see it in the stock price, too.
Yeah, it's stuck in that limbo.
Yeah, between $105 and $110.
Waiting for something to happen.
A catalyst to push it one way or the other.
So what's next for AMD?
What's the next chapter in this story?
What's going to make them break out?
What are the roadblocks?
What are the make or break factors?
Those are the questions we're going to explore in part 3 of this episode.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast.
So we're in the final stretch of our look at AMD.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
The market, AMD's performance, what people are saying on X. And now it's time to look ahead.
Okay.
What's next for AMD?
Yeah, what's the future look like?
What could make their stock take off?
What could hold them back?
What are the make or break factors for AMD in this crazy world of tech, especially AI?
All right, let's start with the good stuff.
Okay.
What could send AMD's stock soaring?
The catalysts, yeah.
Well, the most obvious one is continued growth in the AI market.
AI is huge.
It is. And if the demand for AI chips keeps growing,
like a lot of people think it will,
AMD is in a great position to benefit.
They're riding that AI wave.
Exactly. And if that wave keeps getting bigger,
AMD will be right there with it.
And there are some specific things that could really accelerate that growth.
Like what?
Well, one is more data centers using their EPYC processors.
Okay.
They're already making progress there. But if they can really start taking market share from Intel, that could be huge.
It's all about winning those big contracts.
Right, proving that their chips can handle the demands of AI.
Another thing that could boost AMD, a successful launch of their new AI chips.
Right, like the MI350X.
If those chips perform as well as AMD says they will, it could give them a real edge.
Innovation is key in this industry.
Yeah, you got to stay ahead of the curve.
Offer something unique and powerful.
That's what drives success in tech.
And we can't forget about partnerships.
Right.
Acquisitions.
Strategic moves.
AMD has already made some good ones. But if they can keep forming alliances,
maybe even buy some key companies,
that could open up new markets.
Accelerate their growth even more.
So it's not just about the chips themselves.
Right.
It's about the relationships.
Yeah, the connections, leveraging those to expand their reach.
Exactly.
But it's not all going to be easy.
Right. There are some potential roadblocks.
Okay, like what?
One of the biggest ones, we've talked about it before, profitability.
Yeah.
Those thin profit margins, they're a real concern for some investors.
Show me the money.
That's what they're saying.
If AMD can't improve their margins, it could limit their ability to invest and grow.
Exactly. They need to keep growing revenue, but they also need to control costs.
Make sure they're keeping enough of that revenue to fuel future growth.
It's a balancing act.
It is.
And then there's competition.
Oh, yeah, I can't forget about that.
The AI chip market is getting crowded.
Nvidia, Intel.
Even companies like Google.
Everyone wants a piece of the pie.
It's a battle of the titans.
And AMD's got to fight to stand out.
It's not just about performance either.
Right.
It's about price.
Marketing.
Relationship.
It's a complex game.
AMD needs to be smart and quick to stay ahead.
And then you've got the things AMD can't control.
Right. The external factors.
Global economy.
Geopolitical tensions.
Supply chain issues.
All of those can have a big impact.
So even in tech, where things move so fast, you can't ignore the bigger picture.
Nope.
So a lot of possibilities for AMD.
A lot of potential scenarios.
Okay, so based on everything we've talked about, what do you think is most likely to happen?
What's your outlook for AMD?
I'm cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
I think they have what it takes.
The products.
The strategy to be a big player in the AI market.
You're betting on their ability to execute?
I am, but I'm also realistic.
Yep.
It's not going to be easy.
They've got tough competition.
They need to figure out profitability.
And the market's always changing.
So a lot of potential, but also a lot of challenges.
It's a high-stakes game.
The outcome is uncertain.
That's investing for you.
Weighing risk and reward.
Making informed decisions.
Being patient and resilient.
Well said.
And, as always, we remind our listeners. Do your own research.
Talk to financial professionals.
Make sure your investment decisions are right for you.
Investing is personal.
There's no one right answer.
But by staying informed,
thinking critically,
learning from our experiences,
we can all become better investors.
That's a great way to put it.
Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us on Investing Talk Podcast for this look at AMD.
The pleasure was all mine.
A company with a great story.
A lot of potential.
And a future that's still unwritten.
Exciting times.
To our listeners, thanks for tuning in.
Keep learning.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on AMD.
Are you bullish, bearish, somewhere in between?
Share your thoughts in the comments.
Subscribe to our podcast for more analysis of the stock market.
And share this episode with anyone who might find it helpful.
Spread the knowledge.
Until next time, happy investing.